Hello Year 9 and welcome to your first bit of homework for the year. What you need to do is either watch this video or read the text that's just underneath and then answer the questions at the bottom of this web page. Your answers need to be submitted to Show My Homework, and you can either type them up or you can write them by hand, take a photo of that, but you need to upload your answers to Show My Homework. So this is what the homework is about, the questions are about. You've been studying in your lessons, you've been looking at the causes of the First World War, and we're going to continue looking at that conflict, in particular the fighting that happened on the Western Front over here in Belgium and France, where the British Army and the soldiers from the British Empire and their allies were fighting against Germany. But for the homework, we're going to be thinking about an event that took place at the same time over here in Ireland, which then was part of the United Kingdom. So, to give a bit of background, Ireland, that island to the west of us, Ireland has had a long history of a long relationship with Britain. From the 11th century, it was dominated by England. That was during the reign of Henry II, and in 1801, the whole of Ireland officially became part of the United Kingdom with the Act of Union. There were a lot of people in Ireland who were unhappy about this and who felt that British rule was harsh and unfair. And in 1867, for example, there was a big rebellion against British rule which failed. But there was a big Irish independence movement, people wanting independence for Ireland, and they kind of had a motto which was, England's difficulty is Ireland's opportunity. So they wanted to wait until England was in a period of difficulty to try and achieve their goal of gaining independence for Ireland. And in 1916, England was certainly in some sort of difficulty with, 2 years into the First World War, and that war wasn't really going very well for Britain by the middle of 1916. So a group called the Irish Republican Brotherhood at this point, they began planning a rebellion against British rule in Ireland. And they were helped by the fact that support for the First World War in Ireland was pretty much at an all-time low by the start of 1916. At the beginning of the war, lots of people in Ireland, just like in other parts of the British Empire and in Britain itself, lots of people volunteered to fight. In fact, 200,000 Irishmen joined the British Army. They volunteered to join at the start of the war. But then a variety of setbacks for the British Army had meant that people in Ireland were not supporting the war as much as they had been at the start by 1916. For example, the Gallipoli campaign, so when Turkey joined the war on the side of Germany, in 1915 the British government decided to try and attack Turkey in a place called Gallipoli, and thousands of British, Irish and Australian soldiers were killed. It particularly hit hard some of the Irish regiments, so a lot of people were feeling pretty resentful about the British government because of all of the Irish soldiers who'd been killed in that campaign. There was also concern that the conscription laws, which had been introduced in England in 1915, were about to spread to Ireland, and a lot of people were starting to feel pretty angry that they thought they might be forced to join the army sometime soon. So this meant there was a lot more support for the Irish Republican Brotherhood than there might otherwise have been, and the independence group thought it was a good opportunity to launch their rebellion. And they launched it on Easter Monday 1916. That's where it gets its name from, the Easter Rising. And 1,500 rebels seized 6 army bases in Dublin, the capital of Ireland, and they sort of set themselves up with a headquarters at the post office, or the GPO. And they declared, from their headquarters in the post office, they declared that Ireland was now a republic. It wasn't part of the British Empire anymore, ruled by King George. It was going to be its own country, a republic. The British responded by sending in the army. And at first the rebels managed to hold off the infantry and cavalry regiments who attacked them, but a few days into the rebellion, the British Army sent in the artillery, which was being fired then at the post office, and at that point the rebels realised they had to surrender. So on Saturday, April the 29th, the rebels surrendered, and the 6-day rebellion was over. The Republic, had been in existence for 6 days. That came to an end. The British had won. 450 people had been killed in the fighting, and 16 of the leaders of the Easter Rising were then put on trial and were executed by the British government. They were killed. Now, this actually had the effect, though, of the harsh way in which the rebellion was dealt with. This had the effect of actually giving more support to people clamouring for independence for Ireland. And it kind of triggered a war of independence, which then went on all the way to 1921, at which point a new type of government, not a republic, but something called the Irish Free State, was granted, where Ireland would still sort of technically be part of the British Empire, but be able to rule themselves. However, a lot of people in Ireland weren't happy about this, and this kind of sparked then a civil war in the country, and eventually, sort of a couple of decades later, the southern part of Ireland did become a republic, and it is a separate republic from us to this very day. The northern part of Ireland remained as part of the United Kingdom, and that has meant that there is a disagreement in the north of Ireland between people who are nationalists. That means they want the whole of Ireland to be united into an independent republic, and unionists who want Northern Ireland to remain part of the United Kingdom. So all of those events in Ireland's history, we can trace them all the way back to the Middle Ages, when England was first getting involved in Ireland, but the Easter Rising was a hugely important event on the way towards the southern part of Ireland gaining its independence. So, what you need to do now then, based on all of that information, it's all written down beneath as well. If you want to check any details, have another look. Answer the questions, type up your answers, or write them by hand, submit them on Show My Homework, and good luck.